I just filmed half of this podcast and I forgot to plug in the microphone. We'll just start again. Welcome or welcome back to Compose Bitch with Class. I'm Yasemin. Today we're gonna talk about how to face the fire, how to deal with confrontation, mastering the art of confrontation. I'm still getting over a cold, so if my voice sounds a little bit weird, thank you for your patience and thank you for still listening to me. Think of me as a friend that you can come to for advice. Listen, I'm not brutal, but I don't like to sugarcoat, so you will be getting the honest truth from me. The reason for this is because when I'm doing these episodes, I imagine that I'm speaking to a younger version of me, and she would have benefited a lot from the things that I talk about in these episodes. So let's get started with dealing with confrontation like a pro. I'm going to teach you how to keep composure and therefore maintain power when you are being confronted, when you are confronting someone. This is so important because conflict and disagreements are inevitable. It's important to have that self-assurance, to be able to trust yourself and to know how to handle yourself in these kind of situations to get the best solution out of whatever's going on. So if you're someone who gets super nervous in moments of conflict, or if you're someone who'd rather get stepped all over just for the sake of not dealing with conflict, I'm so grateful that we found each other because I'm going to help you with all of that. So don't worry. So I'm going to give you guys some tips and tricks, but mainly I'm going to give you guys some crucial mindset shifts that are going to change the way you view confrontation. It's going to change the way you act during confrontation. It's going to allow you to look at it from a completely new perspective and take so much of the pressure that you might be feeling off of you. There are just some basic things that if you know, all confrontation becomes so much less scary. On top of that, I'm also going to give you the little tips and tricks of how to act, how to make sure you are able to stand up for yourself and take care of yourself. Let's get started. I want to start by talking about power. Now, I've said this before about other things, but the media has lied to you, okay? I have been observing this idea that when something doesn't go your way, or you disagree with something, or you don't get what you want, and I see this especially with women, I have to say, the more you raise your voice and talk over people and scream and fight and be disrespectful, that is how you are going to be the most empowered and strong. I have to break it to you. I literally feel that it is my responsibility, if you are taking time out of your day watching this, to break it to you that unless you are 5 years old or younger, the only thing that kicking and screaming is going to do is make you look immature, insecure, and dumb. I had to say it. Listen, I'm saying this from a place of love, okay? Because we all have to hear this. Because I don't know why on social media it's like glorified to start like getting in people's faces and being really loud and talking over people and not listening and yelling and being disrespectful and rude and saying hurtful things. No, do you know who acts like that? Little kids. Little kids act like that. And do you know why they act like that? Because they don't have the skill set or the knowledge yet to be able to understand how they feel, form a thought, and communicate that thought using their words. They don't have that skill set yet. That's why they kick, they scream, they cry, say hurtful things, because they aren't getting what they want. And the only thing that you are doing when you act like a child is giving away all your power. The only thing we have control over in this world are ourselves. You ultimately only have control over you. If you can't even control your actions in a moment of conflict, what can you control? I'll tell you what you can control. Nothing. You can't control anything. You are literally giving away your power. I am not saying this to be hurtful. I am not saying this to put you guys down. And like, you can disagree with me, and if that's how you want to act in conflicts, do that. I'm not here to lecture you. My goal, what I want out of this, is for you to have the skill set and the ability to act like a grown-up and hold power when you are dealing with conflict. Because when you have power, what that does is, one, it gets respect from other people. Two, because you have respect and authority, people will listen to what you say, which allow you to advocate for yourself and express what you agree with, disagree with, how something made you feel, what solution you can find to this problem. Three, you would also be setting the standard of how you expect people to speak to you Because if you are throwing a tantrum and if you're screaming at someone, you are basically telling them that is how I communicate. You are allowed to throw a tantrum and scream at me as well. If you act like a child, you are opening the doors for them to treat you like a child. Nobody is gonna be able to listen or have respect for a grown-up who throws tantrums when they don't get what they want. Having authority in a moment of confrontation means having control over yourself and being able to act in a way that demands other people's respect, and it means setting the standard for how you allow people to speak to you. And I'm going to repeat this. The most important thing here is that you are able to defend yourself, and if you give away all your power by acting like a little child, no one's going to listen to you. You're going to lose all credibility, and you are not going to be able to defend yourself. Now, if this is how you are, don't worry. If you want to change, you can. There's always room for improvement. As humans, we are meant to be constantly developing. You are not doomed to be the same person forever. I'm going to give you the tools to change if you want to change. And I'm going to give you guys the mindset shifts and the tips and tricks to be able to stay composed, to articulate yourself, and to hold authority in a moment of disagreement. Disclaimer, when I mention conflict and confrontation, I am not talking about situations where you are physically in danger. If you are physically in danger, don't listen to anything I'm saying. If you're physically in danger, do whatever your gut tells you to do. If your gut says kick and scream, kick and scream. If your gut says shut up and be quiet, shut up and be quiet. If your gut says punch someone in the face, punch someone in the face. I am not talking about situations where you are physically endangered. With that being said, let's get started with my first tip. This is the first tip, and ultimately the basis of everything I'm going to say is have a stance and stand by it. I'm going to go off an example. If somebody confronts you and says, you did this thing and you shouldn't have done it, it hurt my feelings. If you think that what you did was the right thing and you disagree with this person, stand by that opinion. Defend yourself. That being said, if somebody comes to you and says, you did this thing, you shouldn't have done it, it hurt my feelings, and you think, wow, that was actually really mean of me. I really shouldn't have done that. I did not handle myself the way I would have liked. I owe this person an apology. This person is right. Then for the love of God, apologize. Very important thing to understand, and I'm going to probably bring this up multiple times. A mature person, at least, does not think of an argument as ending with winning or losing. So stop thinking about trying to win and start thinking about how to solve the problem at hand. So genuinely listen. And if you think that you actually did something wrong, please apologize. Being able to apologize shows maturity, it shows integrity, and it shows confidence, because it says that your ego is not tied to whatever little conflict is going on right now. Listen, everybody makes mistakes, okay? There's no shame in making mistakes. The difference is, are you gonna be able to own up to it, to learn from it, and to grow from it? That is what shows maturity. That is also what shows authority. That shows power, because you are not tying your ego or your self-esteem or your self-worth to the little argument that's happening here. You're saying, yes, I'm human, and you're right. I made that mistake. Thank you for bringing that up. I apologize. That was not my intention, and I'll be more careful next time. I would just like to say, when you're looking at the conflict from a place of how can I solve this, you kind of just did. Because if you just keep making excuses and you're just trying to save your ego and you're just trying to win, you are continuing the conflict. If you say, wow, actually, you're so right. I did do that. That wasn't my intention. I apologize. I won't do it again. Or I'll work on myself, or whatever. You are solving the problem. If the other person is genuinely trying to confront you on something that hurt them or that they think you did wrong, there isn't much to say after that. And the most that's probably going to happen is that they would say thank you, or they would say I appreciate it, or they wouldn't accept your apology. But like, you're helping the argument end. Again, only do that if you really did something wrong, okay? Have the guts and have the maturity and have the integrity to apologize if you did something wrong. Own up to it. Act like a grown-up. Hold your authority. However, if you disagree, stand by it. If somebody says you shouldn't have done this thing, and I say, no, I should have done this thing, I believe that that was the right thing to do, stand by it. Because you are the only person that's going to ultimately defend yourself. You're the only person that can ultimately take care of yourself. If you don't stand up for yourself, who will? So dare to disagree, dare to stand up for yourself. A big part of this section is being able to listen. Because if you're not listening and you're just being defensive, you're not going to be able to even have a stance. And that usually is a sign that you tie your self-esteem to being right or being wrong in an argument. And if that's the case, I would highly recommend watching my episode on confidence, which I'm going to link down below, because that is going to help you if this is not making sense right now. If this seems like really unrealistic to you right now, I highly recommend going back to that, because I talk a lot about figuring out who you want to be and the steps to take towards that, so that when moments like this come, you know what you stand for. This brings me to my next tip. Stay cool, calm, and collected. This is less of a mindset shift, more of a tip. I can't stress enough how important it is that you go at your own pace, especially if you're somebody who gets super nervous in moments of confrontation. Oh my God, this person is confronting me. Like, I don't know how to act. I can't look in their eyes. I can't do this. First of all, having a stance is gonna allow you to literally stand up taller, to look in that person's eyes, to be open to hearing what they have to say, and being comfortable in the fact that you can either disagree or agree. And when I say take your time, I mean, again, this is not a battle. This is not a win or lose situation. It's not about whose diss has more of a punch to it, okay? It's about understanding where the other person is coming from and standing up for what you think. So don't feel pressure to give an immediate answer, to defend yourself really fast, to fight back. Take your time. If you're getting nervous, especially, take a deep breath. Don't immediately go into defense mode, because the most important thing here is to be able to articulate yourself in the best way possible. So don't just blurt things out because you're trying to defend yourself, because you're trying to say the right thing. Take your time to form your thoughts before you say them. You're allowed to breathe and think about what you're going to say, think about what your opinion is on this, and then speak. I think a lot of times when people say stupid things in a fight that make them look worse, it's because they didn't take the time to breathe and actually think about what the hell is going on and how they are going to express their opinion. So take your time. I don't think you should be like trying to take longer. I'm just saying that the most important thing, priority, is that you articulate yourself in a way that is a good representation of yourself. It's more important that you can stand by exactly what you're going to say to this person. So take your time to think about what you want to say and what your opinion is on what you're being confronted about, basically. And I mean, this is easier to do if someone is confronting you like an adult. If you have one of those child grown-ups throwing a tantrum in your face, the biggest advice I can give you is, no matter what, again, unless you're in like some type of physical danger, don't stoop down to their level. Also, if somebody's acting that way, most likely what they're trying to do is get a reaction out of you. So if you stoop down to their level and start acting like a child just like they are, you are giving them exactly what you want. Don't indulge them. So no matter what, don't stoop down to their level. Just because they're acting like an idiot, it doesn't mean that you also have to act like an idiot. Be the bigger person, and that is also how you're going to hold authority. You're saying you can act however you want and you can be out of control. I, however, am a grown-up and I am able to use my words when I want to express myself. Now, we are going to get into my favorite mindset shift in this whole video. And listen, you've probably heard this before. I did not come up with this. You are going to be like, duh, okay? This is so easy to say, but I'm going to explain to you how to apply it, and I'm going to demonstrate to you why this is life-changing when it comes to dealing with conflict. Have you heard the saying that is something along the lines of, what people say is a reflection of themselves? Yeah, I know what you're thinking. You're like, so cheesy, heard that a million times. It's so easy to say. It's so hard to actually apply sometimes. When somebody's saying hurtful things, it's hard to think, yeah, this isn't about me, because they're literally saying it about you to you. But I want to show you the difference. I'm going to demonstrate to you guys the difference of how you respond to something if you are able to see it from a perspective of everything that people say is a reflection of themselves. Because what you see in other people is also something that you in some way identify with. Even things that you hate about other people are in a way something that you like recognize or identify somehow. I'm going to show you how that changes the way you react to something. So let's say somebody says you're stupid, okay? If somebody says you're stupid, and I'm just taking it as you're stupid. I'm taking it as, oh my God, I'm stupid. It's kind of like, it's better if you watch for this part, which you probably are, because this is, I think, only on YouTube right now. If someone says you're stupid, that's hurtful, right? You're like, oh my God, you're taken aback. If someone says you're stupid and you are able to think of it as them saying that to themselves and they're going, you're stupid. If you view it as them saying I'm stupid about themselves, your reaction is a little bit more like, oh, interesting. And then imagine, like, if they're saying you're a liar, right? If someone's saying you're a liar and you take it as I'm a liar, that's hurtful. It could take you aback. But if you're taking it as them calling themselves a liar, you're kind of like, oh, why would you say that about yourself? Notice how in the first one, I'm taking it in. I'm letting this person get to me, which if they're resorting to name calling, that's exactly what they want. They just want to get to you. They just want you to react. They're actually not trying to solve a problem. Like, they're acting like immature little babies. If you take it as them talking about themselves, it's almost kind of sad. And that's exactly what I want to touch on. For you to not get offended and for you to not act emotionally when somebody says something hurtful, you have to come from a place of deep empathy. Yes, empathy. Because the difference is it's going to steer you away from getting angry, and you are naturally going to start feeling kind of bad for the person that is acting in an embarrassing way. And that just gives you a complete shield, and everything that they throw at you bounces right back to them and hits them right in the face. Because if somebody says something very hurtful and they expect you to go, how could you say that? And you're just like unfazed and you feel kind of bad for them, that is embarrassing. And what you are doing is taking a mirror and you're showing them a reflection of themselves, because you're not taking it in and it's bouncing right off of you and hitting them. This is a kind of like anecdote. I'm kind of like gonna go a little bit on my own tangent here, but I've noticed how growing up and maturing is not about your age. It's really about how much you work on yourself. I think as I grew up, I assumed that older people would be more mature, but it's just not the case. And it's very disappointing how many old people I meet that are actually immature little children and can't control their emotions and still have so many insecurities. And I'm now, after practicing this very much, able to think of it as, if this 40-something-year-old is getting off on talking shit about this 20-something-year-old, honestly, one, I think that's so embarrassing. And two, I'm glad that I could help in making you feel a little bit better about yourself by being rude. It's so not personal to me at this point, and I'm able to view it as, oh, if you're treating someone like shit, that means that you hate yourself. If you're treating me like shit, how do you treat yourself? That unarms the other person, because it shows that it doesn't matter how big their tantrum is, nothing that they can throw at you is going to stick or actually land. If you were, instead of that, to also throw a fit and be like, what? How dare you say that? No, you're a liar. No, you're stupid. You're confirming everything that they're saying about you. So don't do that. Don't indulge them. Let them be embarrassing on their own and be a mirror for them to see it. Maybe they'll be inspired and stop acting like children also. On the point of shield though, if they say something that is a real insecurity to you, the tip or the mindset shift that I just gave you is not gonna work most likely. If I genuinely think deep down that I'm stupid and somebody says stupid, I can't control the fact that I'm gonna get very hurt. So even though I'm giving you all these tips, ultimately the most important thing before you apply all of these things is making a conscious effort to work on the things that you are insecure about. And if you want to know more about that, again, there's a link to my confidence episode in the description. Before I move on, I want to give you guys an example of my Turkish grandma and how she did such a good job at dealing with this certain conflict, and how she was literally the queen of confrontation in this example that I'm about to give you. This is a great example for staying cool, calm, and collected, and coming from a deep sense of empathy. So when I was really young, my mom had breast cancer and she lost all her hair, and she was going to buy wigs. My mom's Brazilian. We lived in Turkey. I mean, my family still lives in Turkey because my dad's Turkish. My mom, obviously her Turkish wasn't very good. She was at a wig store trying to buy a wig, and every time she went, the lady at the wig store would be so incredibly rude to my mom. She wouldn't sell her wigs. She wouldn't let my mom try on the wigs. She was just being the biggest "see you next Tuesday." Okay, to my mom. My mom was like trying to figure this out alone in this foreign country, like trying to speak to this woman. not being able to communicate. So she told my dad's mom, she told my grandma about the whole situation, and my grandma said, don't worry, I'll go with you. My grandma goes with my mom to the wig store. The lady is being extremely rude per usual, and my grandma, this old woman, goes to the lady in the store and in the kindest, most loving, most polite way possible, talking to her very lovingly, she says, maybe your mother didn't teach you this, but don't worry because I'm gonna teach it to you. And when I teach this to you, your whole career is gonna change. So when somebody walks into the store, you say, hi, how are you? And you greet them politely because they're gonna buy something from your store. So Andrea, get out of the store and walk back in. So she made my mom walk out of the store and walk back in. And she goes, okay, go. And the lady's like, hi, welcome. And my grandma's like, no, not like that. Nicer. And she goes, Andrea, get out and come back in. She makes my mom walk out of the store and walk back in. And the girl goes, how are you? How can I help you today? And my grandma's like, exactly. That's how you act on somebody comes in. And now you can do this with all the people. And now it's going to be great for your store. She took that woman that was being rude to my mom, who was a foreigner in this country with cancer, no hair, trying to buy a wig and being a bitch to her. She took this woman and squashed her without saying one insult, without raising her voice once, in the most polite and composed and classy way possible. She smushed this woman to the ground, okay? And that is what I call power, and that is what I call authority. Because if my grandma walked in there and said, who the hell do you think you are, you stupid idiot, well, how dare you treat her like this, was the woman gonna give her what she wanted? No, she was gonna fight back, and then she was gonna tell people, this crazy old lady came into my store and started screaming at me, and everyone would think, wow, that woman must be going crazy. My grandma was above that in that situation, and she went to her in the most polite way possible and said, I'm going to help you, okay? And of course there are the slight disses there. Like, my grandma is still my grandma. Of course she had to say, maybe your mother didn't teach you, so I'm gonna teach you. But she did it in such a polite way that there was nothing the woman could say to go against her, because she was so polite. And that is what I call holding power, holding authority, and demanding respect without raising your voice, being rude, being hurtful, and lowering yourself to anybody's standards. By doing that, she is indirectly saying, this is the way you treat me, and I don't accept a level below that. And she did it with the mask of, I'm going to help you be better at your job. You're welcome. Such a power move. My mom never got mistreated in that store ever again. Also, my mom rocked a bald head, I have to say. Okay, now that I've given you guys my life story, let's move on. Something that might help you guys with the empathy thing that I said is realize that if somebody is being very rude and acting immature, it usually doesn't mean that they're actually trying to solve a problem. It usually means they're just trying to pick a fight because they're either insecure or they need to prove to themselves that they're better than you. It's another form of bullying because they're doing it to feel better about themselves, which is so sad, and that's so embarrassing. So remember, this is embarrassing. The way that they are acting is very sad and miserable, and don't ever stoop down to their level. Understand that clearly they have some issues and feel bad for them. It has nothing to do with you. I know the feeling of somebody just said something or did something that literally makes fire come out of your ears. Like, you know that feeling when you're so angry that you feel like your face heating up? I've had like 2 moments in my life where I started seeing blurry, like I felt like fire was gonna start shooting out of my ears. Like I couldn't see, I couldn't breathe. Whatever you do, stay composed, and you are allowed to feel your emotions, but you have to be able to control the way you act. You have to be able to control your actions. Take deep breaths and remember what you stand for, and remember what you want to say to this person and what you want to fight for, and say them in the best, most polite and most composed and classy way possible, because that is how you come out on top. That is how you stand up for yourself, and that is how you hold authority, and that is how you tell someone, you are not allowed to speak to me that way. Okay, now we've kind of gotten to the fun part of this video, in my opinion, where I'm going to give you, rather than big mindset shifts, little tips and tricks. I'm going to give them based on like different situations. This is fun for me because also like I've used these. I have about 7 of them. They're all super good, but 5, 6, and 7 are my favorites. These are things that you can say or do you instead of stooping down to anybody's level. Okay, so number 1 is the silent pity laugh or silent pity expression. So this is when somebody says something so outlandish, but it's not even a question. Like somebody can just say something wild to you. Sometimes no words are needed. Okay. I love this one for when people say something really self-deprecating and they just want attention, or for backhanded compliments when they're trying to get a response out of you. And it's the pity expression. And this is of course tied to what we talked about, come from a place of empathy. If somebody's saying something rude, it's kind of like, oh, because what you're doing is saying, I don't care. And sometimes really no words are needed. If you're not their coach, their teacher, their parent, maybe their best friend, and you care about them so dearly, someone's being rude or saying something weird, and sometimes it's just not even worth words. Just think in your mind, like, oh, that's sad, you know? It's awkward, but like it shuts them down because they're doing something with the intention of getting a reaction out of you and they couldn't even get a word out. And what you're saying by being silent is you're not even worth me speaking right now. And it shows that you're confident in the fact that what they're saying is not true and that it literally just bounced off of you because you don't even know how to respond because it doesn't even apply to you, if that makes sense. So it's like, I'm just not going to respond so that you can be put out of your misery. We can just ignore that you said that. That's really embarrassing. That's the vibe of the silence and of the okay. Great. My second one, I love this one actually. This one might be one of my favorites too because it's so funny when this happens. It's basically to thank them. And this is specifically for backhanded compliments. And there's 2 versions of the thanks. There's a thanks and then there's a thanks for sharing. And I'm going to explain the difference. You don't literally need to say thanks for sharing, but the vibe behind the thanks makes a difference. If somebody's being mean and giving you a backhanded compliment, it usually stems from their own insecurity that they're trying to project on you. And what they expect is for you to start questioning that thing. So when you say, oh, thanks, you literally took what they said and went, threw it to the corner. You're so confident in yourself that you know what they're saying is not true, or you literally take it as a compliment and it just doesn't matter. Like what they say is not important enough for you to actually try to think, oh my God, were they trying to say this thing that was kind of mean to me? Just say thanks and move on with your life. This happened to me once at a point in my life. I was so healthy, looked so good, was glowing. Okay. I was working out, and also like I've always been meaty. I need to preface this because it's important to know that I did not have an eating disorder at this time. Even if I did, this would have been a weird comment for the person to make, but I looked really good at this period of my life, okay? I've never been like skeleton skinny in my life. Even if I tried, I couldn't be. It's just not my body type. I was healthy. I was taking such good care of myself. I was working out consistently. I was very mindful. I just felt amazing, okay? And when you take care of yourself, you just feel a million times better, and that's where I was at the time. And this woman who was older told me, you lost a lot of weight. And she did it with that expression, like kind of like in a negative way. And I was like, thanks. And she kept repeating herself, like she noticed that I didn't take it as an insult, and she kept going, no, but like you lost a lot of weight. And I was like, oh, thanks. And I just kept saying thanks. And the funny thing is that she literally kept trying and trying. Also, side note, not even somebody close to me. Like it's not somebody who was close to me who might have been genuinely concerned, which like even though there was nothing to be concerned about. And she kept going, no, but you lost a lot of weight. And I just kept saying thanks. And like it just stopped after a while. And listen, like I genuinely was feeling so good about myself. So like I wasn't about to be like, wait, this random woman thinks that I lost too much weight. Do you think I lost too much weight? It shows that I don't have confidence in myself. I knew I looked good and I felt so good. So I was just like, thanks. The other thanks, which is the thanks for sharing, it's similar to the silence. I use it a lot, like kind of like a, good job for noticing. Like it's kind of like a thanks for sharing, where the person is trying to subtly diss you and you can sense like a negativity. I think it's a great way to shut people down, to be like, oh, you can literally say thanks for sharing. It just shows that the things bounce right off of you. They can say whatever they want. And ultimately, you're putting up a mirror to them and showing that by being rude, they are literally just embarrassing themselves and nothing else. Like, you're untouchable. Number 3 is saying, excuse me. And I'm not talking about like, excuse me, how dare you say that? I'm talking about like, oh, I didn't hear you. Repeat that. Excuse me. When somebody is acting in a not very mature way, especially when they're saying hurtful things or being rude, usually it's not very thought through. It usually means that that person, for the most part, doesn't have that much control over themselves and is acting completely on impulse at the moment, which means they probably didn't think through what they said. Excuse me is a great way to call out what the person just said without actually calling it out, if that makes sense. Just ask them genuinely. The first thing that does is it takes the punch away from whatever they said. Like if they just said something really nasty to you and they thought they ate with it, if you're like, excuse me, and they have to repeat it for you, it takes away the punch and it forces them to have to actually go back to what they just said and repeat it, and makes them have to face the fact that they actually said that and that it didn't work. And all of that together, it gets more and more embarrassing. The more you think about it, the more time this takes. It's kind of like when you have to explain a joke and then it takes all the funniness out of it. That's what happens when somebody says something mean and you keep asking them to repeat themselves. Or if they're going to keep saying it the same way, also embarrassing, especially if you are not reacting explosively and you're just like, oh, again, feeling bad for them because everything that people say is a reflection of themselves. It just gets worse. It just gets worse. That's why sometimes I like the silence, because you're just literally putting the person out of their misery. But sometimes you can throw in an excuse me if you really want to bring attention to what someone just said. It also shows that you're unfazed. No, say it to me again. Like, say it to me again. I know who I am. You can say whatever you want, and that doesn't change anything for me. Number 4 is an extension, I think, of number 3. Number 4 is to bring attention back to what they're saying by questioning it. Oh, that's an interesting perspective. I don't know how you could have reached that conclusion. Why do you think that? And again, some things are not worth your time and energy. And in those cases, I don't recommend making these stupid fights last longer than they need to. Make sure that like this can really be genuine. If you don't want to listen to someone throwing a tantrum, you don't have to. But if you actually are trying to understand, do so. That's interesting. Can you tell me more? Or that's an interesting take. Why do you think that? By genuinely asking them, you're disarming them completely, because they're trying to fight, and by acting like an adult, you are being an example and you are showing them that you are not going to be defensive and you're not going to fight back. And if they want to actually have this conversation, let's have this conversation. So again, if it's something stupid like a backhanded compliment, I don't even think it's necessary to do this. Don't waste your time if it's not worth it. But if it's a problem that you're actually trying to solve, and this goes back to like the first thing that I said in this video about being able to apologize if you need to and standing for what you believe, be open to listening to what that person has to say. Also recognize that if they're acting like a child, they clearly don't have certain skill sets. Again, deep empathy. Come from a place of empathy. This person is not as lucky as me. They didn't have the role models I had. Their mother didn't teach them the way my mother did. They didn't get to watch this amazing episode that taught them how to act in these kind of situations, so they're lashing out. But I want to get to the bottom of this. So you still hold your ground, defend whatever you believe, whether you think you need to apologize or whether you think you are right and they owe you an apology, or whether it was a misunderstanding. Stand your ground and articulate everything you're feeling, and take your time and use your words to express your feelings, your thoughts, your emotions, and genuinely be curious. That's so interesting that you got to that conclusion. Why do you think that? Be the bigger person. I sound like a broken record, but don't try to win. Try to solve. There's no point in trying to win, because there's no winning in an argument like this. And if you solve the problem, everybody wins. And if they actually are just doing the bullying thing that I said, they're going to realize that there's just no point in trying to do this with you, because you don't entertain that. And that's what I mean by setting the standard of how people are allowed to speak to you, because you are making it very clear that you're open to having an adult conversation, but you are not going to entertain anybody's idiotic tantrums. Ready for my favorites? Number 5. This one, oh my god, I've used this so much and it's amazing, and it literally shuts people up immediately. When somebody says something crazy, instead of reacting or adding to what they're saying or responding in the same way, again, deep empathy, you go, are you okay? Is everything okay? Because clearly there's something wrong with a person, right? And I've noticed that people immediately shut the fuck up when you say that. The mentality behind it is you're acting in a really embarrassing way. Is everything okay? Like, normal people don't act like that. That's the vibe behind behind it, oh my god, the way it shuts people up is so beautiful. This one's literally like magic. Approach from a place of empathy. Clearly this person has some self-confidence issues. Are you okay? I know I said 5, 6, and 7 are my favorites. 6 is basically number 4, so I'm sorry for that confusion. But moving on to number 7, and I've mentioned something similar to this, but if they are gonna act like kids, guess what I'm gonna say? Treat them like kids. You are allowed to say, clearly you're very emotional right now. When you calm down and you still want to talk about this, let me know. I'm not going to listen to what you're saying when you speak to me that way. The reason why I say that this is one of my favorites is because the only things you can't get back in life are your time and your energy. You can find new opportunities, you can meet new people, you can make more money. You cannot get back your time and your energy. And if you are trying to solve the problem, which is what I've been telling you to do this whole time, you are not going to solve anything if the person is being rude and disrespectful to you. If this person is just fighting and just being rude instead of actually trying to fix the problem, there is no point in wasting your time trying to explain something or trying to be patient with that person. You have full authority to not listen and not speak to them when they are acting like that, because you should know your worth. If you don't, watch my confidence video, but know your worth. You don't speak to people like that, and therefore you are not going to tolerate other people speaking to you like that. And I've used this a lot because I'm not about to stand there when somebody is being rude. If you're going to be mean, I deserve more than that, and I'm not going to stand here. If you want to discuss this when you feel better, when you are not as emotional, let me know, and then I'll be open to talking about it. You do not have to take anybody's shit, and that is also why I keep saying that by you being the bigger person, you are holding authority and you are setting a standard of how people are allowed to speak to you. Because if you're being immature and you're screaming at everybody, then nobody's going to take you seriously when you tell them that you won't tolerate them doing that back to you, because you've set the standard that you're okay with that kind of behavior. And listen, you are allowed to feel all the emotions. You are allowed to feel so angry. You are allowed to want to do whatever you want. Wanting and feeling are different than what you actually do, and that is self-control. Self-control is what allows you to have authority. It is normal for you to want to scream in that person's face. The difference is, are you actually going to compose yourself, take a deep breath, notice what the best thing you can do to stand up for yourself, to take care of yourself is, and act in that way? Or are you going to be a baby and give in to all your wants and emotions and just throw a fit and make yourself look stupid and make everybody lose all respect for you? It's your decision. You know which one I recommend. But I think if you have self-love and you have self-respect and you have self-confidence, you owe it to yourself not to act like a child. And you owe it to yourself to stand up for yourself, and you can't do that if you lose control and if you stoop down to other people's level. Don't be rude and immature, and don't take anybody's rudeness and immaturity either. You are allowed to leave. You do not have to sit there and listen to anybody. You do not owe it to anybody to let them just walk all over you. I really think that one is one of the most important ones, because there's no reasoning with someone who is just being mean. There's no point in trying to reason with them. You're wasting your time, and that is the most valuable thing you have. So don't waste it. Have enough respect for yourself where you don't waste your time and energy. Guys, that's mainly it. That was a lot. I hope I didn't repeat myself too much. A lot of these connect to the same point. I'm stressing all this so much because I want you to have control over yourself and your life, and I want you to have the leeway to always stand up for yourself and to represent yourself in the best way possible, because if you don't do that, who else is going to do that? It's a little bit scary to think of for some people that ultimately the only person you have in this world is yourself, but I think there's also comfort in that, especially if you work on yourself and you take care of yourself and you are able to control your reactions and the things you say and what actions you take. There's so much power and comfort that comes in knowing that you have control over yourself. Thank you for listening. If you disagree, let me know. I welcome disagreements. I'm not here lecturing anybody. If there's something specific that you like that I touched on, let me know. If there are other questions that you guys have or other episodes that you want me to make, let me know. If nobody else said it to you today, I love you so much. I'm very proud of you because you took time out of your day by watching this video to learn something, to grow, to change your perspective, to better yourself. And everybody deserves to better themselves, and you took a step towards that today, and I'm very proud of you. I love you so much.